So we have a presentation, Ken Huang and myself, Sean Wright, discussing AI readiness for the enterprise. So let's get going. See, so Sean, that's me, SVP, Digital and Physical Security at Universal Music Group, and moving over to Stealth relatively soon. And Ken, you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, thanks, Sean. Yeah, I'm currently serve as CEO of Distributed Apps.ai, focused on the generative AI, especially security aspect. Also do some training and also the consulting service. Also, I serve as the VP of Research at Cross Security Alliance at the greatest China region. Back to you, Sean.
Excellent. Thanks, Ken. So here's the agenda. We're just going to go through what is readiness, what we think of as our 5 pillars for AI readiness, the concept of an AI intake process, mapping your AI intake with devsecops, some readiness to-dos, considerations, and then Ken will go through in more detail some of the architectural design patterns with security controls and known AI threats and countermeasures, which I'll also participate in that part too. But that is the agenda. So what is AI readiness? AI readiness is when an enterprise is prepared to treat risks associated with AI in the business and technology function. So this includes having some sort of a sustainable program that provides a lot of visibility around any sort of AI technology that's being introduced into the enterprise. That would include security, data privacy, trust, ethics, and all the nifty new laws and regulatory compliance that we're going to have to comply with. So known threats. As everybody knows, AI introduction to the world is relatively new. It's been around for a long time, but in the day-to-day use and how businesses are modernizing their operations, AI is a fairly new thing introduced into the world. With that, we have already seen a lot of new threats that have emerged recently, and it is only the beginning. We have new things coming out every single day. Just saw an article about the Worm GPT chatbot, which is like the evil twin for ChatGPT, where you can craft all sorts of malicious things within that environment. The things to consider and to take a look at, and everyone should have on the top of their mind, is phishing, social engineering aspects. These are going to get a lot better. In the past, we were able to pretty easily identify phishing and social engineering, but with the emergence of malicious AI, conversational AI applications and agents, we are seeing very, very well-tuned phishing and social engineering, deception and trust rot, data leakage, of course, prompt injection attacks, tuning, data poisoning, shadow LLMs, model poisoning, software vulnerabilities that would be within the architecture of your AI technology system, bias behavior that we now have to consider, lack of access controls, model API attacks, and rogue agents that are sitting, within your environment that you may not even know about. So lots to consider, a lot of different threats that are emerging, and this will only be the beginning. There's going to be many, many more to come. So our 5 pillars that we've sort of broken this down into are around security, data privacy, trust, ethics, and laws and regulatory compliance. For the purpose of this discussion and presentation, we'll primarily focus around the security elements. However, the other pillars, we may do a presentation later at a later time to dive further into those. But within security, ensuring that you have some sort of an AI readiness assessment conducted or at least ready to go. The approach should always be risk-based. Adopt some sort of a framework within your organization that can address AI security worthiness, and that fits within your organization. So you may want to look at NIST. Maybe NIST may not be a good fit, so you may want to look at OWASP. But there are a lot of good ones out there. CSA's AI security framework as well. Apply appropriate controls and really formalize some sort of an AI governance program around AI technology for your business. This is probably one of the most critical areas. Having some sort of a formal organization that can sit there and manage and ensure that the business is following your various policies that you've created and adhering to those policies and controls that you've implemented and put in place. Data privacy, maybe some things around that to get maybe a little more educated around introducing the concepts of zero or near zero data retention for AI technology use. Data prepping the data that's going into your LLMs and your data models, potentially using synthetic data and obfuscating data that may be used for an AI agent or AI technology underlying LLM or some sort of data source. Ensuring that there's trust, so having a data corpus tuning that is evaluating, the output that comes back to the user around, the specific use cases, identifying and detecting any sort of hallucination, and then refining that as you formalize and you evolve your data models, and then just deploying a trustworthy AI application. So you can look at a variety of certifications for this if you have an actual AI application. If you're bringing in a third party, application, and there are many of them, ensure that they're doing something that is enabling trustworthiness within the application itself. Same is to be said about the security aspects as well. Ensure that they have some sort of a SOC audit or compliance to SOC 2 or ISO certification or something along those lines if it's an application that they're deploying. Give thought to ethics. The AEDTs for Maryland, New York, California, Illinois, bias audit that they have in place, the equal opportunity, algorithmic fairness. These are things to consider for ethics, as well as general requirements for consumer-facing AI. So this would be in the context of if you have something that is taking in consumer data from like a website or something along those lines. You want to make sure that you're able to respond to those requests from those consumers, if they're asking for their data, what's being done with their data, and that sort of thing. Laws and regulatory compliance, AI Bill of Rights, FTC's coming out with a bunch of stuff. California AB 331, which is an amendment to the existing bill that's already in place. Colorado AI transparency, and the EU AI Act and GDPR. So these are all things that are really critical, actually, when you start looking at deploying AI technology into your environment. These are the 5 pillars that really should be focused on. There should be some representation for each one of these areas. But again, for the purpose of this discussion and for this presentation, we'll be focused primarily on the security aspects. One of the things I think that collectively, as I've gone out and spoke with various organizations throughout a whole bunch of different industries, having some sort of an apparatus in place where you can really take in the AI technology, the various use cases that are being presented by the businesses in a way that's structured and formalized within the organization to vet out risks in these 5 different areas of importance. So this would be an intake process, and it may be something that already exists within your own organization, where you may have something that's you already have in place that you can kind of curtail towards the deployment of an AI technology within your organization. So having an AI working group that you can present new technology, new use cases for AI is critical, that has representation from security, IT, privacy, HR, ethics, legal, and risk management, so that everyone can kind of get their eyes on it as it's coming into the organization. Have a project analysis as part of the AI design intake process. So this would require the group as a collective effort to understand the architecture and design and review the various elements that would be specific to their area of expertise. What comes out of that is some AI readiness recommendations. This would be in the form of an AI risk assessment. So looking again at these 5 different pillars to determine whether or not there's any risk that would be introduced into the business by deploying whatever AI technology it is that you're looking at to modernize your business. From that point, collectively make a decision for a go, no-go type of decision. And this is really based on risk. This goes back to our risk-based approach, where we're looking at the various areas that we've assessed, and we're making a decision collectively as an organization to either allow the AI technology to work within the environment or not to. And if there's a no-go decision, that arrow at the bottom is just simply saying that it needs to go through a redesign process. So potentially, you may want to reduce scope. There may be some data sources that are being included for an AI application or an AI agent that is maybe too risky. It could be, some sort of HR database or something that you have in place that is of a higher risk that there's just not a tolerance for. So it may be there may be some requirement around just redesigning that AI technology use. And then if you do decide this is great, and there's an acceptable level of risk based on the risk assessment that you've conducted throughout the 5 different pillars, integrate that last piece into an AI governance organization, or some sort of a AI governance group that can ensure that through the deployment of the technology, there's a level of governance oversight that addresses not only any risks that may need to be dealt with, as you would find in the risk assessment, but also to ensure that the proper policies and controls that are being recommended to treat the risks are actually being followed and applied for that AI use. So, again, complete risk review, document and approve, obtain approval, sign off by the business and everyone involved in the decision-making process. So build a continuous AI governance, compliance, and controls into your DevOps. This is kind of where I see and where we see the kind of the real gears for implementing your various security controls, implementing your various controls around ensuring trust and fleshing out bias within an AI application and so forth. Is introducing this as part of the DevSecOps process. And this is something that I like because it's typically something that we find in a lot of organizations. So this shouldn't be an entirely new concept. This should be something that I think most of you would be familiar with. So we will get into a little more detail during Ken's part of the presentation, but really introducing this AI intake work group process, the output of that should then fall into an existing DevSecOps program that can be continuously evaluated and continuously improved as the technology is deployed and as the AI technology is being utilized within your environment. To-dos, readiness. So we've thought a lot about this, and we think that there are a variety of things that you can do as an organization to help ready yourself for the introduction of AI technology within your environment in a way that is safe and secure. So I think the big piece of this is kind of know your AI, understand what the business is trying to do. Look at mapping and assessing any of the AI dependencies and get those documented. So you have some sort of formalization around the various systems that are in place and that are a part of your AI technology that you're looking at deploying. What decisions depend on non-human technology? I think these are areas that should be focused on because I think that they are areas that are kind of ripe for the use of AI technology. So if you understand where these are, then you can kind of get ahead of things where you have transparency into what the business is doing, and you can get out in front of the business's need to use AI technology to modernize their area of businesses. And identify core use cases. Find your AI technology potential candidates for use. So if you're an organization that's looking at leveraging AI for recruiting or customer acquisition, those are probably areas that you may want to take a closer look at for AI use. And the business is going to probably want to leverage AI in some way to make their job better and easier. With respect to AI adoption, you really need to develop some policies governing AI use within your organization. So ensuring that there's something documented for people to follow as they are thinking about ways to deploy AI technology, thinking of ways to better their operations or modernize their business, but having policies in place that they can actually follow that ensure the safety and the trust and ethics and all the things that we've talked about previously are being addressed. And addressing security, data set integrity, accuracy, transparency, risk, and social impact. Those should go into your governance policies as well. You want to make sure that you have a a monitoring system around any AI technology that you're deploying that can give you visibility into the use, the access controls, all the things that would be of concern or things that you would want to see from a transparency perspective to give you visibility into that AI environment to further minimize risk. And then ensure all AI systems are disparate and test unfair outcomes. So isolate as much as possible. In other words, so taking the same concept as you would with something like PCI, where you don't want to subject your entire environment to PCI compliance. Rather, you want to isolate that as much as possible. So you're only worried about and you're only spending money on developing controls for that isolated environment. Same concept would be applied to AI technology. Governance and accountability, design a corporate AI compliance function. So again, this goes back to having some apparatus in your organization that can continually govern the and assess whether or not the controls are working effectively. They're some sort of an organization that has the visibility around the risks and can monitor those effectively. But having that in place is a critical element, not just for AI, but for a lot of things that a company may do from a risk perspective. And this is probably something that is already in place at most organizations. Deploying an AI intake process, as we discussed earlier, having compliance monitoring against the things that would come out of an AI intake process, in the form of measuring and monitoring risk, socialize AI policies throughout the organization, and actively interface with the different business units. So get to understand and get to know what they're doing and what their demands are for AI use within their area of business, so you can help them. So you can help those organizations out in deploying AI technology in a way that is safe and secure for your organization, and to minimize liability for your organization. Communication prep. You want to ensure that you have you've developed some level of communication that you can have in the form of documentation to enable you to respond to regulators if need be, to respond to customer inquiries. And with that, you'll need to really define and have a lot of visibility around the AI mechanics for processing PII. Really document those, because the regulators are going to start asking about what you have in place that can defend your actions from a compliance perspective. And again, prepare to defend AI output. So this is in the form of that documentation, having a structure around your deployment process for AI in the form of an AI intake process, having policies and controls in place that you can monitor. You really want to have something in place, especially if you are required to adhere to regulatory bodies to defend yourself. They're gonna ask for these things. Put thought into an AI risk assessment. So either through a third party, or if you have something that you want to develop internally, this is something that is critical to obviously assessing what you're doing with AI technology within your environment, assessing all new AI technology for risk. And again, if you have that intake process that includes the 5 or the 6 different areas that we mentioned, security, privacy, IT, HR, all those different areas that are going to look at their respective areas. They're going to want to make sure that there's no risk for those particular areas within the organization, and we want to make sure that we assess all new AI technology for any risk. Assess attack vectors and risk to consumers. So again, this is something that's ever changing. I would recommend, I think the recommendation is to have, at least a function within the organization that, maybe it's sitting within the security department. I think that's probably an appropriate place for it, where, someone is continually assessing new attack vectors and associating those attack vectors with what you have in place, to have some sort of a continuous process to assess that within your organization. Apply appropriate risk mitigation controls. Again, this is very use case dependent. It really depends on what AI you're using. If it's in the form of a co-pilot, that holds with it certain risks. If it's in the form of building your own LLM, if it's in the form of buying a third-party application that's going to connect to an LLM and internal data sources, all these different use cases, there's many of them. And we want to ensure that we have the appropriate level of controls to treat the risks that are coming out within each one of those use cases. Leverage frameworks like the CSA framework or NIST, RMF, the MITRE framework has a very good framework specifically for AI, or the OWASP AI top 10 list. In your risk assessment, include a DPIA, which is a data privacy impact analysis, and then have your pen test application, or have your AI applications pen tested. This is something that you would probably do with any other application, so don't forego AI applications. Make sure that you do pen test those, or if you're using a third-party application, ensure that they are doing their due diligence for pen testing their own applications and getting those certified. And then again, having an AI ongoing governance and compliance program. Again, I think this is a critical aspect. I think governance is probably one of the biggest things that you want to surround your AI organization, or the formalization of some sort of an governance and compliance program to surround and to ensure that there's visibility around the AI use within your organization. Implement your end-to-end governance for AI. Governance should be ongoing, as it would with any other application in your environment. Integrate existing InfoSec and privacy programs to AI governance, and have ongoing AI awareness campaigns that will train and educate your employees around the appropriate use for your organization for AI, and ensure that that doesn't just stop with education, but integrate your phishing campaigns, any sort of security awareness that you're doing. Really think about having something in place that addresses AI squarely, and not in just the form of using AI from a responsible use perspective, but also integrating potential AI threats like phishing, AI phishing, and AI social engineering into your more advanced security awareness training that not only is targeted at your general user base, but further training within your devsecops organization as well. So more in-depth training for your developers, having some sort of a scaled or a tiered awareness campaign in the form of education and awareness. Frameworks and tools to consider. So for security, there are many different frameworks out there. As we kind of mentioned, there's probably more than these 5 that I've mentioned, but I've looked at, and we've taken a look at these, and we feel that they will probably for the most part, cover the majority of your use cases. For most organizations. So definitely build your AI program. If you're going to build an AI program, or if you're using something that's already in place, consider some sort of an AI framework that's already established that works well for your organization. And it could be a blend, it could be a combination of a variety of these as well. Within the trust pillar, there's the NIST framework for AI trustworthiness. There's AI certifications for trustworthiness that you may want to consider if you're deploying an AI application or an AI agent, or if you're utilizing a third-party application. You may want to request these of your third party to provide for you. Ethics. AI for people, ethical guidelines for AI for trustworthy AI. There's the FAT, which is the Fair Accountability Transparency Framework, and then there's a lot of different ethics tooling out there as well. Microsoft has some good tools in place. Google also has some good tools in place as well that can be leveraged if you're building your own. LLMs or data models for modernize your business in one way or the other. Consider looking at those to further evaluate your data models to ensure that it's not hallucinating, or if it is, at least have a way to sort of flesh that out along with your testing around bias and appropriately training your models. Data privacy, a lot of new regulations, a lot of new laws. I'm sure a lot of you are seeing this, not just here in the States, but also internationally. There's most of the laws that I've seen and I've read in depth, dozens of them. Most are primarily concerned with fairness, with ethical bias, and with data privacy. GDPR, most of the laws seem to be modeled after what's coming out of the EU AI Act and what's come out of GDPR, new regs for California, Colorado, Maryland, New York, Virginia, Connecticut, AI Act, etc. Those are all crafted around the same. It's the same flavor, I guess, if you will, or the same message I think that's being sent in those laws if you read them in depth. And then having AI governance via impact assessments through a data privacy impact analysis for any AI technology that's being deployed. And I would recommend doing this not just in the very beginning, but ongoing as well. Regulatory compliance, EEOC, you're probably going to have to, if you're here in the United States, you'll have to deal with that. That's an equal employment opportunity compliance. This is, specifically important for California, New York, and a variety of other states. And this ties back to that SBAB 331 for California. You can read that, and there's a lot of stuff in there that relates to equal employment and so forth that you would be required to adhere to. State privacy laws, consumer-facing AI, consumer rights for AI-powered solutions. Colorado has an AI transparency and privacy policy. The EU AI Act, potential FTC requirements. We've seen some, recent litigations around this. These are all things to consider as you deploy AI technology and ready your business for AI use. This is kind of why we have the concept of having an AI intake process, because one person can't quite possibly cover all 5 of these different areas. So through that AI working group, you should have representation from security, from IT, from trust, ethics, data privacy, regulatory compliance. Legal should be involved in that. And these would be things that you want to consider as you start developing what your AI framework needs to look like to protect your business. So as in the beginning, I talked a little bit about the known threats and potential countermeasures. I can walk through this, but Ken can provide also some information as well. And so around phishing and social engineering, obviously security or AI awareness training. This goes into multiple levels, so just basic user training around just responsible, AI use and making sure that they understand the policies that you have in place, and then further having more, I think, advanced training for your DevSecOps teams and groups that are actually going to be developing this, potentially developing AI technology to modernize your business. Tuning data poisoning. So this is validating data. Right now, I think the only way to do this is through manual validation to ensure that the data that's coming back isn't coming back in a way that doesn't, align with what should be coming back, the known accepted results. Bias behavior, bias detection tools, as I mentioned. There are plenty of those in place, plenty of those out there. Microsoft and Google both have multiple tools to choose from. Deception or trust rot. So actively communicate AI safety and responsibility to users. This goes back to your AI awareness training. Make sure that your users understand what might be hallucination. So verify. Make sure that they're verifying the responses that are coming back. They're using an agent like ChatGPT or something along those lines. Shadow LLMs. I think there's going to be, and probably already are, shadow groups within the organization, much like we had with shadow IT, and some organizations kind of businesses doing their own things. Ensure that there's some sort of CASB to manage access to LLMs, some sort of visibility around your access to the LLM through visibility tools, monitoring, that sort of thing. Access controls. So to deal with lack of access controls, integrate an RBAC to LLMs and data sources used for modeling. Some layer of access controls that sits at ingestion. If you're using an application, even if it's a third-party application, they should have some security or some checking at ingestion to an LLM or at the point of ingestion for data sources. Data leakage. Utilize zero trust, zero retention APIs for LLMs and encrypt where possible. There could be some limiting factors to this. If you have a process where if you have zero retention, if there's an issue where you need to, resolve for forensic capabilities or some sort of an incident that's occurred, you definitely want to have a way to conduct forensics. If there's a zero retention, that may limit. So just really take a look at that carefully before you start really, really nailing that area down. Model poisoning, validate your data corpus. This again is in the form of a lot of manual controls, but also ensure that if you again are using a third-party application, there's some layer of security in there that's doing the validation for you. Model API attacks. This is, I think, a huge problem and a huge threat because, As everyone is well aware, we have an environment, most of our environments are built on API frameworks. A lot of the integration that we have throughout our entire supply chain is based on API frameworks. So I think API attacks are going to become more and more pervasive. So having something in place where you can monitor API use and having some sort of an API gateway that's used for evaluating what your APIs are actually doing within your environment is, I think, critical. Prompt injection attacks. This is prompt gateways using a prompt gateway using DLP or allowless, or having some sort of a DLP in place. I think that can monitor what's going into your various prompts at ingestion, so you can get visibility into what exactly is occurring. Software vulnerabilities, this is something I probably don't need to talk a lot about. I think most organizations have a security program that's dealing with software vulnerabilities in one way or another. This should be not limited to just those environments or just what's in place today, but that should extend into anything being deployed on the AI technology front. And then rogue agents. I think this is a big problem where we have a lot of people wanting to take advantage of things like ChatGPT, or applications that enable some sort of a business function. Those are all agents that would enable a user to do something leveraging an underlying LLM. So having those rogue agents in your environment, you want to give some consideration to scanning or evaluation, monitoring, and ensuring like least privilege for data sources that may be being utilized by those rogue agents. Rogue agents, I think, are pretty dangerous because you've got all the things that we've talked about, and again, if you don't have visibility into your environment, I think that's a huge risk. And I know that everyone is clamoring for the use of AI technology within their environment to modernize even just their own, day-to-day, activities and optimize what they're doing. But companies and groups within companies as a whole are all looking for ways to better their area of business. And rogue agents are, I think, going to be a growing problem within those organizations, because you lose visibility into what is actually happening. So I think that's pretty much the end of where I'm going to cover. Ken, I don't know if you wanted to cover any of the countermeasures to consider with the different threats that we've uncovered.
Yes, thanks, Sean. I think you covered very well. I may add a few points.
Yes.
And then once I'm done, maybe I have to ask you too, because I don't have control. Maybe you go to next slide.
Yeah,
okay.
Of course.
Sure. Yeah, so I think I may add something in terms of tuning, like if you do the fine tuning, the data may be poisoned, or model data also will be poisoned. So in addition to manual validation, you need to add like access control to data. There is the research in terms of the federated learning, so you don't have to actually share the data, right? It's also for privacy and also to make sure the data is access controlled. Other research in terms of the provenance, data provenance using blockchain technology. So that's some advanced technology in the research area. In terms of the RAG agent, there is a many tool like endpoint management tool, right? That we can leverage things like CloudStrike that we discussed about that. Yeah, I think you covered very well, and also from the readiness perspective, 5 pillars are very important. I think that we can focus on the security for this as well, but you also covered extensively in terms of framework, the design, and the tool. Yeah, if you can go to next slide, Sean.
Yeah, sure.
Yes, typically when you're trying to develop large language model applications, you may thinking about how can we design it. So here are the 4 typical design, right? There may be some mix match between those. In the next few slides, we're talking about all this kind of different design and the security concerns of security architecture behind it, and how why we need to use that. Sean, next slide, thanks. So one thing is, I think for now, majority of AI application, which is based on large language model applications or tools, using the prompt engineering plus vector database. So prompt engineering is really using the natural language model, natural language processing power, right, to enable develop to control the LLM response by providing instructions. I'm just from the developer perspective, but if you are user of ChatGPT, you can also use prompt engineering. Usually when you use it in order to increase the kind of memory, right, because there's context window with larger language model. So you may have to increase the memory space for that. Then you're using the vector database, which has similarity search. So typically you using the result from the vector database as context plus your prompt, you can get the result. But in terms of that, you have to protect your vector database and also protect the API. Sean mentioned that you're using the API gateway or using no name or source, right, as an API security tool. And in terms of prompt validation, we need to make sure the avoid the prompt injection. That is relatively harder to do. It's not like SQL injections, relatively easy. You're using regular expression. The prompt is really natural language processing. So it's maybe need some additional technology to do it, as there's ongoing research. And in terms of the PHI data, there's Microsoft tool, another tool like Macy in Amazon that you can leverage, right? And also you need like at least Sean mentioned that you can have apply for the zero retention policy with your LLM provider like OpenAI, right? Or Microsoft OpenAI service. But you have to retain at least yourself for the data, so you can check for misuse. The OpenAI has the moderation API, and there's many other tools like a guardrail, even NVIDIA has the moderation framework. Of course, auditing logging is important. Yeah, so there's a best practice. First, you have to give the low, like GPT or large language model, a low to play, and then you need to give a system message and use the instruction, and maybe it's more like a few short example, right? After that, you can retrieve the data from the vector database. It's called the retrieve augmented pattern, right? There's a research paper on this as well, but it's more like you retrieve data, augment your prompt, so you get more meaningful results from the reasoning capability by the large language model. And after that, you can accept the user input. You have to validate the input. And also, in the response, you need to format the response. You can say that it is the JSON format, right? Or you can say it's the format that you need the links, right? And also, you should restrict the AI response to certain links and also the token. So I give you this example here. You can take a look here. Like we play the role play game. I don't want to get deep into it, but this is 8. I think it's the thing you have to consider. You may choose 3 or 4, but this is a general like best practice when you do the prompt engineering. Next slide, Sean. Yeah, so another way is really fine tuning. Sometimes you have to do the fine tuning. Let's say, what is fine tuning? Is based on foundational model. Sometimes we call it the base model, right? You need to fine tuning it using your own data. And this may be sometimes it's called pre-training, right? So it's more like to fit your needs, and also adapt to your specific domains. It can also improve the performance and save your computational resource. Another way is really if the foundation model it comes with the bias, you want to reduce the bias with your own like training set. You don't have to have a larger data set, but you do need your own data to train it. And there is some technology called the low rank adapter by Microsoft, right, to freeze some of your parameters so you don't need a lot of GPU memory and processing power to recalculate these parameters. You're just freezing some parameters which is more tailored toward your data set. That parameter is called the low rank adapter. And you can further kind of compress the model using quantization, what it's called. It really compress your data like by 1/4. So there's different technologies that you can use, but in terms of security, again, you need to sanitize your data. You need to do the model validation. You also need to do the devsecops, which Sean has recommended. Next slide, Sean. So ChatGPT and other large language models like Cohere, potentially the Google, they may adopt a similar approach. They may have the plugin API, which actually has access to the real data. And the function call is when you do your API call, you can say which function you want to large language model, the model API to call for you. And this really augment your capability, right? But that comes with trade-off, especially the security. You have to validate the third-party plugin and their foundation model function call is a legitimate. Like I say, if you have to meet the security compliance, such as PCI DSS compliance requirement, you have to make sure they also, right, because they are your business partner, they also meet the requirement, especially if they need a process credit card, or if they are business associate or covered entity for the HIPAA compliance, then you need to validate. So that's very important. Actually, Sean has mentioned this in the readiness checker. So you have to do it. And also you have to validate the data right in the transit. And once the response back, you have to validate it before you send a response to the end user. I list some validation tool here. OpenAI has a modulation API, and there is a startup company called the Guardrail. They have also open source their tool. NVIDIA has called the NEMO Guardrail that you can take a look. Sean, next slide.
Sure.
You can also train your LLM from scratch if you have the larger budget, right? This usually is a bigger company, or if you are really very well funded startup, right? Then all the foundation model does not really fit your needs. Then you train your data from scratch, right? In this case, you have to make sure your data is clean. There's different tools to clean. You have to do the model validation. I draw the picture here. You can take a look, right? And also, it's very important that you have the devsecops. Actually, Sean mentioned the devsecops in the context, also dev in terms of privacy ops, dev regulation ops, right? So the large language models are really fit very well into this whole process, but it's a part of the process. And eventually, once you train data, it may still have the bias. Maybe data is not cleaned enough. It may still have the privacy data in it. Then there is some new strategy like Google has some hackathon in terms of unlearning. The approach to unlearning is trying to train the model so that it can forget some of the parameters which associate to the bias and to the privacy data. So I think this is the last slide. I will back to Sean. Maybe you can just summarize. Sean?
Yeah, no, thanks, Ken. That's great. Yeah, so I mean, I guess as you can see, there's a lot of things to consider when we start looking at readiness in the enterprise for acceptable AI use. You know, I hope there was material in here that everyone can walk away with something. You know, if anybody has any questions, you can feel free to reach out to Ken or myself. But that concludes the presentation, and just thank you for the folks that helped us out with the presentation, getting this together. And I'm sure that as new things come out, we'll probably add different pieces for the security controls and the trust areas and ethics. But this is as everyone knows, this is a space that's evolving very, very, very quickly. So I wouldn't be surprised if there was a new threat tomorrow or even later today. So that concludes this presentation.
Sean, if I just want to add, Sean and I, and also other contributors, we are writing a book on the ChatGPT. There also Web3, but there is one chapter on the security aspect. I'm also personally the core contributor for the OWASP LLM vulnerabilities top 10. So yeah, I think it's really good to have this discussion. Yeah, it's thanks Sean and thanks Cloud Security Alliance. Yeah, please reach out back to us. Thanks.
Yes, yeah. Thank you.